Hi, welcome to Straight Talk. As we continue to deal with this opiate epidemic in our country, we have to begin to look at ways of helping people. What's the best treatment? Outpatient, inpatient, detoxification. How do you know what's the best one? How do you know if a program's even a good program? So today on Straight Talk, we're going to really kind of walk through with you, how do you know? How do you make those distinctions? And we've got some great people, real experts with us to help guide us through. Dawn Jennings is the executive director of a brand new residential drug treatment program called Awakenings Recovery Center, which is in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're going to really help us do that. And Nick Alba, who's director of license and compliance with Amethyst Health. So Nick knows everything about how to make sure a program is good quality. How do you know that they meet all the standards? So between all this, hopefully we can share with you how to find a good program, because everybody knows somebody that needs help. And hopefully after this show, you'll be able to get that. So Dawn, let me start with you. I guess congratulations.
Thank you.
You're ready to open up a brand new program.
Yes.
So you've been doing this for a long time. You've been in this field a while.
Yes.
Maybe you could help explain when someone calls and says, I've got a drug problem, or my son, my daughter, my spouse has a problem. What do you go through to find out what that problem is, and how do you decide, and how do you advise them on where to go from there?
Well, there's a process of a pre-screen that we go through over the phone with the patient when they call. Generally, we'll just get a brief history of what they're using, how long they've been using, depending on the type of drug it is, whether or not they're going to need a detox level of care, if they have medical issues, mental health issues, medication, anything that would pertain to their treatment plan, we would want to know over the phone. That way we can get them the right type of help. Psychosocial issues, including legal, and some folks have CPS cases and other stuff like that going on. So we want to make sure that we're getting all that information so we can treat them appropriately, and then go from there.
So you were able to get that over the phone, most of the time, a lot of times.
Yeah, most of the time, the majority of the information. Naturally, that's just the pre-screen, and then once they actually arrive to the facility, we would do a full assessment and a lot more detailed biopsychosocial, and figure out exactly what's going on with the individuals so we can provide a good, comprehensive treatment plan for them.
Now, with this opiate crisis, epidemic, fentanyl, the drug that everyone talks about, do you hear a lot?
A lot, unfortunately, yeah. That seems to be the majority of what we're seeing right now, at least in the area. It's a huge problem. All of our staff has been trained for Narcan. Even our patients are being trained for Narcan, and most of them are even being discharged with it because it is such a huge issue. There's a whole bunch of different options out there now for opioid treatment, and we want to kind of embrace whatever path makes most sense for that person. So whether that's Vivitrol injection, oral naltrexone, Suboxone, Subutex, Sublocade, there's a lot of options out there now. So we're trying to work with all of those avenues just to make sure that we have the best fit for the patient.
But as far as you're still seeing, it's a huge problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're not seeing anything going away so fast.
I believe actually it's kind of went the other way from late statistics, from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Nick, you're the guy in charge of making sure that the program is ready to go.
Correct.
Talk about this program that you built in Hagerstown, Maryland. It's right like downtown.
Right downtown.
Which is really unusual. You've built a lot of programs.
Correct.
Do you have to, what's the process? I mean, I can't imagine that you just go in and say, okay, we're going to open up here, but you got neighbors to deal with, zoning. Go through a little bit of that for us.
So specifically in Hagerstown and in all the states that we've opened up with, there's various levels of people, there's various levels of agencies within the government that we have to talk to, that we have to start conversations with before we even choose a site, to where we're going to be providing the treatment. In Hagerstown specifically, we were looking at bunch of, numerous locations, and I found this one location in downtown Hagerstown that used to be a dormitory for students who were coming from out of this country and going to a satellite University of Maryland campus there. And I thought this would be perfect for a level of care that you do not see much at all in this entire state, and that's a high-intensity residential. And just based off of that, I said, this is something we have to try. We have to try and do this. And luckily enough, we were able to get some variance changes to the use of the building. And the city themselves worked diligently with us through the entire process to make sure that we did everything that we needed to do, and that they provided us with as much assistance as possible. And that was the first step to opening the facility. And then we had to go through state licensure.
And this is probably every state.
Yes, every
Doesn't
state.
matter where you are.
It does not.
But you've got to go through this process.
Correct.
Everywhere.
Yeah, from here in Maryland to our locations in Ohio, places that we've done work with in Pennsylvania, Georgia, New Hampshire, all have to go through the same exact process, specifically with variances in zoning or change of use of the building, things like that, before you even go to get the facility license itself with the state.
You've got to, now, I would imagine that every city you're in or state that you're in, there's a State Department of Health and licensing, and
Yep.
so you've got to go and kind of find out, is every state different? I mean, you find that everybody's a little different?
Every state is much different.
Really?
Yeah, so in a state such as Ohio, for example, in Ohio, the state certification that you go through with the Mental Health and Addiction Services Board, you actually open and you provide services for 2 months prior to them coming out, doing a survey, and looking at looking at client records, looking at your policies and procedures, your emergency plans, infection control, and then they would issue you a state certification, which is something that not many people have
So I mean,
seen
you could,
before.
so you open, and then if they don't like you,
Correct. Then you close.
then you,
Right.
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and in New Hampshire, for example, unless you're getting federal funding, there is no specific licensure for an outpatient treatment center. But then again, in Maryland, it's much different than that. In Maryland, they have a regulation they call 1063, and where you have to receive a national accreditation prior to receiving licensure from the state, which I think is a great thing. They come out and the state is ensuring that you're maintaining these standards that these national accrediting bodies are setting forth
Before you get your...
before you can even provide services to anyone in the community,
Yeah.
which I think is a wonderful
So
thing.
you think that's a good
Yeah.
good process?
I think you're weeding out and you're ensuring that programs that are already in existence or programs that are coming and choosing to open up, you have to provide a standard that these accrediting bodies and the state are looking at as quality standards.
So people out there looking for a program, they should be asking these questions.
Yeah,
Is it
definitely.
certified? And again, as you said, every state's a little different.
Every state is a
So
little
if somebody's out there saying, okay, I want to go get a drug program for my kid, you want to make sure it has all those certifications and meets
Correct.
those standards, and not just to assume.
Right.
Because there's probably, I mean, Dawn, you probably see a lot of these, they're all on the internet. Everybody's got a beautiful swimming pool, and everybody's got a beach or a golf course, or everybody's got something more beautiful than the next, but you may not know if they're any good.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of programs like that, there are some very good quality programs that have all of those accommodations, but a lot of times it's just more of the bells and whistles in those programs, and it's not necessarily the treatment that people are drawn to. So we want to take a look at what kind of treatment are people getting, and what are they really
Yeah.
benefiting from being there, aside from massages and pools and whatever
Right, I
else
mean,
they
it
offer
seems-
there.
We have definitely, I mean, with this epidemic, I think people are taking advantage of a lot of people who need help, and we're going to talk more about that. But thank you for getting us started. When I come back, I want to talk about those levels of treatment that you had mentioned, and the different kinds of things that we have. So thank you guys for being there. When we come back to Straight Talk, we're going to continue our conversation about treatment services. It's important that we find good programs for the people we care about. So stay with us. We're coming right back to Straight Talk.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Find fun activities to do, like boating and biking, or camping and hiking, plus much more. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org. Don't allow your weight to threaten your health or control your future. Excess weight or obesity can cause emotional and physical health risks. But you can take control. The Your Weight Matters campaign offers free resources and tips to help you measure and understand your weight. Take the Your Weight Matters Challenge. The free toolkit prepares you to speak with a healthcare provider about your weight. Your weight does matter. Take the challenge and take control today.
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking about drug treatment, opiate epidemic. We're talking about how to help the people that we care so much about. And we're being joined by Dawn Jennings, who is the Executive Director of the Awakenings Recovery Center in Hagerstown, Maryland, and Nick Alba, who's Director of License and Compliance with Amatus Health. We're learning about different levels of treatment. How can you best find the best program for the people you care about? So we're going to keep our conversation going. Dawn, you were mentioning, we started by talking about how do you decide outpatient, inpatient, detox. Give a little thumbnail of what that means. You know, for somebody that would get outpatient, they call and you say, well, I think they could make it an outpatient, or someone needs detox.
Right.
Who needs what?
So it really is based on ASAM criteria, which is a very specific criteria that we look at, you know, all the dimensions of an individual's life. So we look at all the areas we talked about earlier, whether it's if they're going to have any potential for withdrawal, if they're going to have complications that are due to medical, any mental health or cognitive type issues that are going on, what does their social environment look like, what does their recovery environment look like, what kind of supports do they have in the community, their family, their peers, that sort of thing, to see whether or not they would even be a success in an outpatient setting.
So outpatient is kind of like the least
Right.
restrictive, I
Right.
guess, you know, where they come a couple nights a week or a couple days, something like that, like counseling.
Right. So you can do individual counseling, you know, which could be the least is once a week for like an hour, up to 9 hours, and then intensive outpatient is anywhere from 9 to 20 hours a week, combination of group and individual, and then PHP would be above 20. And those are all considered
slow down,
outpatient.
go back. Got to slow her down here, because this is important. So you've got outpatient up to 9 hours. Then if you go more than that, it's be considered intensive outpatient. Is
Right.
that?
That's correct. Up
Now-
to 9 to 20.
Now this day or night or day or evening, I guess.
Yep, it could
Okay.
be either.
So that's 9 hours to
Up to 20.
20 hours. So if somebody's in counseling, it's considered intensive outpatient.
Right. If
Okay.
they're doing that many hours, yes.
Now, is that for somebody who's got a more serious problem? Is that how that works?
As opposed to an outpatient
Yeah.
person, yes. But it kind of works both ways. So if someone, you know, gets an assessment done and they start off in intensive outpatient, and they're doing well, they step down to outpatient. If it's someone that is just kind of just starting out and they're not quite meeting certain criteria, they may, only need that regular outpatient level of care and never step up. Or maybe they will, and then they may have to step up to the next level of care. And then, there's even partial hospitalization, which is above that. And then, of course, you get into the residential levels of care.
And when you say, explain the part, because when you say hospital, that's like all of a sudden you have different thoughts of
So partial hospitalization. It's not a hospital. It's just basically you have to have about 5 hours of care per day.
Okay.
And so it's a higher level than intensive outpatient, but you don't necessarily have to stay there. It's not an inpatient setting.
So you could come there during the day, but it's got to be 5 hours a day, but you can sleep at home or somewhere else.
Yeah, and there are programs out there that offer the sober living component with that. So there's some places that you can go to their program and then also stay there, but that's not necessarily a requirement for the level of care in all treatment centers anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's more intensive. And then ultimately you get, residential?
Right, so there's the 3.1 levels of care, and then there's what we have, which is 3.5 level of care, and then even higher there's 3.7, and then there's a 3.7 withdrawal management, which is the detox level of care. So there's many different levels that you can go through. So at Awakenings, we would generally see folks stepping down from a 3.7 withdrawal management or a regular 3.7 level care, and then we provide that next step, and then we'll refer them down to the next level, and then however that looks for their journey on their recovery process. So we're kind of in the middle.
And detox seems to be, if somebody's hooked on heroin or fentanyl, do they need detox? Would you recommend that?
Absolutely, they need detox, yeah. A lot of, the providers here, at least in the state of Maryland, finding just detox in and itself is very difficult. There's only one other facility that I'm aware of that's just a freestanding detox in the state of Maryland. Most are tied to the inpatient levels of care. So they'll do a detox in the inpatient level care, and they kind of do that step down within the facility.
So this is being in a place that's you're getting over the withdrawal and what the drugs are doing to your system. How long does that take?
It depends on what they've been using for how long. If some hospitals still do detoxes, it could be anywhere from 3 days to 5 days to 7 days.
And that gets the physical part out.
For opiates, generally, yes.
Now, Nick, opening up a detox, is that harder than opening up residential or?
In some states, yes.
Yeah.
In the state of Maryland, they have a certificate of need process through the Maryland Healthcare Commission, similar to the process that a hospital would have to go through when opening up in the state of Maryland. Now, not all states have the CON process for a 3.7 or 3.7 withdrawal management program, but the state of Maryland does.
So to open up a detox, okay. But you still need the beds because it's 3 to 5 days is kind of a mile, so it is kind of a residential where they actually live.
So the highest form of inpatient residential treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking at going to detox, and then you move on to where?
So depending on the program, but if they were to come to our facility, they may come right out of a detox level of care as long as they're medically stable and mental health wise they're fairly stable and they're on their medications and compliant and we feel that we can appropriately treat the person. Certainly we can accept them straight out of a detox setting, and then from there they'll stay with us.
Into the 28-day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then from there, during that process, they really kind of stabilize a little bit more. The medical piece, the detox part, has been completed for the most part, and really they kind of do a lot of relapse prevention planning, continuing care planning, just identifying, addiction as a whole. We do a lot of psychoeducational groups just to kind of teach about addiction and what that looks like. There's a lot, triggers, coping skills, pretty comprehensive, but also only the beginning of the recovery process. They're with us, and then we'll refer them, like I said, to another level of care, a lower level of care, and they continue on. So it's not 28 days and they're all better, usually.
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that we're looking at something that really builds on each other. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the recovery house model. But I want to know what goes on in 28 days. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's caught on for all these years. So hang in there. Thank you guys for being here. When we come back to Straight Talk, we're going to continue our conversation about drug treatment, opiate epidemic. If you know somebody that's got a problem, we're putting up some numbers, hotlines for you to call, websites to get help for those people. Stay with us. We're going to come right back.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking about drug treatment. We're trying to give you the information of what's outpatient, what's inpatient, what happens. How do you know what's the best treatment for the person you care about or for yourself? And also how to make sure that the programs you look up on the internet or you go visit, that they meet the qualifications to make sure it's a good program, because it's so important. Some are expensive. You don't want to waste your time. You want to make sure it works. And we're talking with Dawn Jennings, who is about to open a 54-bed residential program in Hagerstown, Maryland called Awakenings, and Nick Alba, who is the Director of Licensing and Compliance with Amethyst Health, who have treatment centers in many states. 4 states? 3 states? 4 states.
4 states.
4 states. So they know what they're doing. So welcome back, you guys. Thanks for hanging in there. Nick, recovery houses. We used to call them halfway houses, I guess. That seems to be really growing. What are they?
So recovery houses, halfway houses, sober living,
Right.
are forms of structure for individuals who are in early recovery or trying to sustain long-term recovery, and living in houses with people just like themselves, right? Where there's rules they have to follow to allow them a semblance of structure to get better. Now, there are recovery houses that are not attached to treatment facilities, but facilities like ours at Amethyst Health, we offer community housing, which is fully accredited through CARF, that people can stay in when they're in outpatient treatment with us, to allow for more structure when they leave the program during the day.
So a recovery house, you're in there with people who are also obviously
People
in
just
recovery.
like- yep, people just like
And
yourself.
but there's no treatment. That's really like
No.
a place to live where it's safe, I guess. where there aren't people using.
It's safe. It's monitored mostly by either its house managers. Sometimes they do have housing staff, but it's monitored. There are requirements to live in the house, and it's really a good stepping stone for someone who is leaving inpatient or residential treatment to go to one of these places rather than going back into a similar environment that they were before they initially went into treatment in the beginning.
And Dawn, so if you have someone in your 28-day program and they're ready to leave after 28 days, is the recovery house the model you want to send them to so that they're not going back to the streets?
Well, it would depend on the individual patient. In some cases, that a recovery house may be an appropriate step-down plan for them in conjunction with an intensive outpatient program or a PHP program. In some cases, they're not quite ready for that, so we would step them down to a lower intensity residential treatment program, the 3.1s that we were talking about earlier. And that's just giving them a little bit more structured time before they get to that next step. So it just depends on the individual and what their needs are.
Doesn't this all boil down to the fact that people need to be in treatment a long time? And these 28-day wonders, or what we used to have in our heads of getting cured or something crazy like that, but that the longer we can keep them, the better.
Absolutely. I think there's a huge misconception that 28 days is the cure, because first of all, there's not a cure. It's an ongoing, lifelong process in the recovery community. I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's a whole lifestyle shift. So the treatment aspect of things is just the beginning, the very, very baby stages. And, as time goes on, people get a little bit better with their ability to cope with certain things. They know how to handle certain situations a little bit better. The cravings to use, things like that get better. Drug dreams get better.
So the key, keep them as long as we can.
Yeah.
So that's a good tip. Listen, you guys, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much. Great information. Again, we hope you're watching and that you find the programs you need. Amatis Health, great programs. There are lots of numbers up there for you to use them. But look in your own areas, your own neighborhood. Nick told us what to look for, and Dawn told us how they work. Hopefully, if there's someone that you care about, or yourself, you need some help, please take the time to help yourself and get the help that you need. And if there's someone else, help them too. So I want to thank my guests. I want to thank you for watching Straight Talk, and we'll see you next time.